This is actually a quote from the book. I'll just get to read it and let you teach on it. When it comes to scaling, the easiest path most leaders default to is to hire. But the best managers know that growing the team is not always the answer. Too many teams hire when they should be optimizing the people they've already got. I think that's a mouthful, and I think we stepped on all kinds of toes, which is good. Why is that temptation to just move to, okay, we got to scale, we got to hire?
Well, listen, I think it's easy to solve any problem with resources. When we have more work to do, let's just hire another person. And the problem with that is that doesn't make something scalable. It doesn't make you more efficient. It doesn't allow you to do a little more with a little less resources. And so I've always firmly believed that resourcefulness is a greater trait than resources. In some ways, you could argue that resources is like carbs, but it just kind of goes away. But resourcefulness is muscle. It kind of stays with you. And if you develop it as a team, it sticks with you over time and gives you kind of superpowers and all the challenges you'll face ahead. And so as a leader, when your team is telling you we need more resources, we need more people, I think the answer is oftentimes to refactor before you hire. Great. So you need more help. Find a new way to make your process more efficient. And let's go through another round where we are doing more with less before we choose to just throw more people or more resources at the problem.
All right, now let's talk about how they can actually begin to truly optimize. So and you touched on that, but I want to dig a little deeper here. So we have a lot of small business men and women owners that are listening to this program, and I think it's easy for them to jump into that trap of, okay, I'm going to hire some people. But if they sit down and they go, okay, I'm going to listen to this Scott Belsky guy. I think he's probably right. But how do they go about actually assessing the current team, maybe the individual, Scott, the roles, to truly go, okay, where can I optimize versus, okay, this is not a situation where I can be resourceful. Maybe I need a resource.
Well, I think that there's an art and a science to this.
Mm-hmm.
On the science side, it's in all forms of optimization in a team, I'm a big proponent of the idea of A/B testing, which is typically used when we're building a website or something, and you make the button blue instead of green, and you see if it performs better, and then you revert to the previous version if it doesn't, and if it does, you just do another test and keep making the product better and better and better. There's a version of how we do that as teams, where we stop meeting every Tuesday just because it's Tuesday, and then we reevaluate 3 weeks later. Did that make us more efficient or less? And then we revert to the previous version, or we adopt the change and do another test. And I think it's important to do that in terms of who's leading different things, as well as how you go about the work itself. So I would say that is a part of it. I also think it's important, obviously, to have an environment where you're constantly evaluating people. As a leader, being very forthright with folks about, here's what I'm seeing and here's what I would have expected to see. Like, let's discuss the delta of that, and recognizing that everyone needs to move on at some point, whether it's internal or external. The truth is that as leaders, we love it when there's no change, when everyone's happy doing their job. Mm-hmm. Yet the funny thing is that the only source of continuity and like growth as a company or an organization as a team is discontinuity. You have to move people around. You have to make sure people feel like their learning curve is steep. I mean, that's the only way you optimize the product that you're developing. And I think the greatest leaders get uncomfortable when everyone else is just comfortable, because they recognize that maybe we're not pushing ourselves at the edge.
That right there is a great statement, folks. Go back, rewind, play that, listen to that again, hold yourself to that standard. I think that's a great statement about the great leaders get uncomfortable when everybody else is comfortable. That's really, really good. Scott, you also say in the book that successful founders swear that hiring for initiative over experience is the way to go. I believe this too, but why is that the case?
Yeah, I think it's funny, when my venture was started, we didn't have the luxury of hiring the most experienced people because they were too expensive. Mm-hmm. And a lot of organizations out there, especially nonprofit organizations, faith-based organizations, you're hiring people based on their passion for the solution, their passion for the problem. and you can't necessarily always hire the top people in the field for every single function. And so there's a luxury in not being able to do that, which is that you end up hiring people based on their initiative, their past history of taking initiative and what's interesting to them, and your bet that they'll continue to do so. But as soon as you start becoming more successful, you get the luxury of being a resume snob. You suddenly start to want to hire the people with the right companies on their resume, the right experiences, the right titles, and that's when we start to sometimes end up hiring people that may have tons of skills, but aren't those who have the infectious initiative. It's interesting, within an organization, initiative is infectious, it's contagious. Everyone sort of gets it from one another, but expertise is not the same way. Like, that sort of stays siloed. And so I've learned over the years that I try to optimize on the initiative side, because I find that in that situation, there's a resiliency in the team. People are developing each other into the roles that they need to play, as opposed to making the bet that if you just get everyone with the right skills, you're going to figure it out, which, more often than not doesn't actually work.
Mm-hmm. How often do you see, Scott, when you get some people in with some serious initiative, that those that may be already there, and they start seeing that initiative, because we can all see it and smell it, and then they see the results that those new, excited Energizer bunnies are getting and the recognition they're getting, how often do you see that it does rub off? Is that what you were referring to, that it becomes very contagious?
I've seen a lot of culture change in teams. I mean, my current role as Chief Product Officer at Adobe, I oversee some new products. I oversee some products that have been in the market for 25 or 30 years. And some of those older products have people who've been with the company for decades in some cases. And I have found that when you bring kind of new perspectives and people with fresh energy and modern practices, into a team, as long as there is a sense of respect for one another and a really strong sense of alignment about what problem we're trying to solve, I do believe it's infectious. And I have seen a lot of people change as a result of that sort of mix.